Are we ready? We are ready to roll. Hi everyone and welcome back. This is round 2 of 3 rounds of In My Sewing Room Sewing Marathon. We are working on this beautiful quilt called Moonlight Star. This quilt is a large quilt. It's square. It's 98 by 98. There are 4 rows of 4 and then this beautiful 17-inch border on all of the sides. It is a stunning quilt. But the remarkable thing about it is that with the square and square system, it is really super, super easy. I love what my students say, and I have one that I printed off just yesterday that is a new one. And this is from one of the members of our premium club. We have a teaching website. It is called squareindasquare.net. And in squareindasquare.net, you can go in and watch the webinars, and this will be in the webinars. We have Quilt Club Week. You can go in and watch it in Quilt Club Week if you are a Quilt Club member, and also in our premium club. So webinars are just whenever we can get them in that we do. They're free, they're open to the public. Quilt Club Week is a dedicated week, the last week of September. It has 5 years of the week sessions in it, and it is a great, great teaching area to go. And then we have our Premium Club, and Premium Club is basically I'm going to say all year long. We have our fall semesters we just finished, and this testimony is from a student who just finished a week ago with it. And then we also have a spring semester with about 12 or so classes. Fall semesters are at least 9, at least 12. It varies more or less depending on the quilt and the way holidays fall and so on. But anyway, this is from one of our students, and our class, our quilt that we did was a large quilt. I think it was like 80 by 90, something like that. And just an awesome quilt, and the students have really excelled and gone overboard with their work and their creativity. Part of what we were teaching in that was how to set blocks together to get different units, and that's kind of like what we're going to do this afternoon. We made our blocks here in the middle, and then how you add to them and set them together to create and expand on that block. So it was creativity, and it was how to expand on the block. And let me tell you what she said. She said, I'm finished the Flying to the Stars semester quilt. I love everything Square in a Square. I love the reference books. I love the charts. I love the classes. I love the patterns. If you feel like replacing a block in a pattern, it's no problem. You can just go to the charts and do it. This year, I wanted to explore the diamonds of Jody's system. So I added a few of the Fort Worth stars, which use those diamonds. And once I mastered the cathedral star, and I made 12 of them, and I put them in the quilt. And then she goes on to talk about some fabrics and some other things. And then at the very, very end, I love, love, love this. It says, it's big, it's beautiful, and complicated looking quilt. But we all know once you break it down, it really isn't. I love that. I just love that. I love how I can teach you guys all of this stuff that's just so easy. And then the way that you put it together and mix it up and stir it around and marinate it and add to it and take away, it just takes on a life form of its own. And you make these big, beautiful quilts that look complicated. But with the Square in a Square system, with the science of patchwork, with overcutting, and just these little tips and hints that we do along the way, the pressing, you get such clean, precise, neat work. If you watch this morning, and if you didn't catch the class this morning, you can go back to Facebook, YouTube, squareandsquare.net, any of those places to see it. But we broke this down and did it. So simple, so simple. Now we're going to, in this afternoon's class, we're going to go around it again. But just, you know, probably one of the comments that just kept coming in on all the different formats on this is showing, it was just like amazing, amazing, amazing that you can do this. Everything we do starts out just like this, square in the middle, strips on the side. Of course, your sizes change and your colors change, but this is how it all starts. This is how we made this quilt. And this is how we're doing the one in the patriotic fabrics, our new We the People, our new Celebrate, our Eagle Vine, some of our checks. This is all square textile fabric. You can also find that on our website. Now, if you're going to order, you go to squareandasquare.com. That's where you order fabrics, books, rulers, patterns. That's where you do the purchasing. If you want the teaching, you go to squareandasquare.net. We have 2 separate websites, each one dedicated to a certain job. The pattern that we're working on is Moonlight Star. You can order it and get the hard copy, or you can purchase it and get a download. If you're out of the country, if you want to start right away, the downloads are always great to do. So this morning we did the star. We learned how to take our basic square and turn it into our flying geese. We learned how to add the corner squares without cutting squares, and we learned how to cut a perfect 4-patch, which you may not think that a 4-patch is hard, but you have 4 squares with 4 corners. So that's 16. 4 times 4 is 16. So you need 16 perfect 90-degree angles to get a perfect 4-patch. Bam, mic drop. We did it easy. Way to go. Okay, so we're going to make this crown shape right here that goes around our star. You can see here how we've used actually it's black, it's kettle black. It looks kind of navy, it's an antique black. You know, they couldn't do black up until a certain time period. They could just do the indigos and the dark, dark blues. So to have a true antique black, it is kind of more of a navy. So we've got We the People, which means that's We the People, the Constitution, handwriting, exact size, everything the way that they did it in this fabric. And we've got our flag tone on tones, some Celebrate, some check, and then the lightest Eagle Vine. Now on the Eagle Vine, we're not worrying about direction in our block anywhere. The only place we're going to worry about direction is in these big rectangle pieces that are up here in the borders, and we will make sure our eagles are horizontal here and that they're vertical on this way. So we're going to work on some of these basic squares. We need 4. We need 4 of these basic squares for each block. So we're going to sew up our basic squares. We've got our squares and strips cut, and if you watched this morning, you saw us do that with the red. So we're going to sew some of these up, and then we're going to trim them up. And when we get them trimmed up, we're going to sew 2 together. We're going to spice it up a little bit. We're going to sew 2 together. Then these 2 are going to be cut in half. Bam. And we're going to get top and bottom for our block with these little crown shapes. And then we're going to take 2 that are sewn together, and we're going to sew those side strips on. We did that this morning with 1. We're going to cut those in half, and look how we get that crown shape with those corner squares. So bam, there they are on the side, and bam. So really this is just a repeat with just a few little alterations to it, to what we did this morning. And that's what I love about this whole system, is you learn just some basic things, and then you can just expand on those and work with those forever and ever and ever. Okay, anytime you have any questions, get those in on the comment. They're a little bit delayed. We'll try to answer those in real time the best that we can. If a time period goes along and you don't get it answered, then type it in there again. We've got lots of different formats going, and there's comments on all of those. And Steve, my sweet husband, who brings all of this online for us, who is a retired pharmacist, and I always say that because if you know anything about a pharmacist, you know that they are very detailed and they're very precise in their job, and in their realm of world, there is no mistakes. So he does a great job online of getting all of that to us, and he's going to be over there monitoring the questions, which normally in my sewing room formats, it's just me and my camera. We don't have multiple cameras. We don't have microphones. I have to stop and read the chat and get back to it and everything. So we are very thankful to have Steve with us today for the In the Sewing Room format. And I know you guys like it because you tell us so much that you do. And you do get to pick up on different things. It's just kind of a different pace than our I'm going to say our hard-hitting membership classes. Not to scare you away when I say hard-hitting, but whoops, need my fabric pieces. Oh, I got them. Okay, so I double checked, I cut these over the weekend, and I just now double checked them to make sure that I had my correct stack and my correct sizes and all that. So, and we talked about how to read the pattern. There's a lot of stuff that we talked about this morning that I'm not gonna go over again this afternoon, unless it's something that we need that pertains to what we're working on. So when we sew our basic squares, we put our strip in the sewing machine first. I don't cut the selvages off. It actually helps me save the good part of the fabric because I have to have some to start in the machine. So there we go. We got a little bit started in there. And I need 4 of these for 1 block. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to concentrate on 2 blocks. I'm actually doing half of the quilt for this one. I don't need another big quilt, another big queen king at 98 by 98. Probably really is a king. But in this day and age, all the beds are so many different sizes, and people like it to hang down on certain sides, a certain width, and all of that. Oh, this fabric is so amazing it glows. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, it produces light.
Well, it is a light. Now, I do want to tell you that when I was making my sample blocks to audition my fabrics to make sure that I had the right ones in the right place, now that this morning we did the eagle with the red tone-on-tone flag, and I've sewn with it for a while. We've had that one for a length of time, but this one is We the People, and it's one of our new ones, and this is the first time sewing with it. And there's something about the combination of this eagle vine with this We the People that that going through the machine, it's just different and it's wonderful. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, get those in. And now when I'm doing basic squares, I can get them pretty close together, about 1/4 of an inch, or a pinky finger for me. I got little fingers. You know, I think I'm going to go ahead and fill the strip up because okay, so I'm going to go ahead and fill the strip up. When we were working this morning, we only put a certain number on the strip, and I showed how to cut it, and I showed how to bring it around. But on this one, if I fill the strip up, then you'll get to see a little bit different technique. Because it all depends on how many you're making. So I can't quite get that one on there. Okay, so I can't get this one on here. There's not enough strip fabric, and I don't want to wait for everything to sew up and get underneath here. Then it's harder to work with. So I know I can't get another one on. So before it gets all moved up under there, I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. Over here behind my sewing machine, I have a little spot in a basket where all of those go so that they stay organized. And so when I get ready to work on a scrap project, those are there ready to rock and roll. All right, so when you get to the end, then you just start your new strip. Now, this is side 1, and obviously a square has 4 sides, so we have to get this strip on all 4 sides. Now, if you were making, you know, a bunch of them and you needed more, then you just keep putting them on the strip and keep going until you have all of side 1 on. Now, if you were done and you're ready to just sew these back around, then watch this real carefully. Okay, this was last, and now I'm going to bring it around, and it needs to be first. See, this one doesn't fit on there. How's that going to work? I'm going to have to cut them apart to put them on. So this is the one I need. So I'm going to snip it, and I'm going to grab it, and I'm not going to turn loose of it. It was last, now it gets to be first. So this goes in my lap, and this goes on the machine, and I am going to lift my foot. That's the only time you've seen me do it, just because I want to be able to get that under there and use my fabric to the best of its ability. And now we're just going to sew down side 2. See, just bring it around. It was last, now it's first. Now sometimes I don't want to think about what I'm doing, I just want to come sew. And so if I have my scraps all organized, then I can just come up and start making these basic squares and make and using my scraps, and I don't have to have something planned, and I don't have to have color thought out. I can just come up and spend time with my sewing room and with my fabrics and my sewing machine and just have a good time without a lot of thought or prep. Now this will hold probably at least 10 squares. So I always think about my strip being 40 inches because it's a good, easy number to work with. And most likely, no matter what fabric you've bought, you've got at least a good 40 inches on a strip when it's cut selvage to selvage. So these are smaller than 4 inches, but if they're 4 inches, I should be able to get 10 on that strip pretty easy. And then I want to come and cut it before it gets too far up under the needle. And I do want to trim off where I started the other. I don't have to, but it just makes it so much neater when you come over to your pressing area to press. Now, if I had more of these to do, if I was wanting to work on all of these, then I would just start another strip and repeat that process. But I want to move on to side 3 and 4. So I want to put my little scrap in. Don't make your scraps too little. Part of the job of this scrap is to move all of your good stuff out so that you have room to clip it and get it ready for the next step. So if you're too tiny or thinking like this, I would not put it in that direction. I would put it in the long direction because part of the job is to push that out so it's easy to get to it. Now you can go to your rotary cutter and cut with a rotary, or you can just come in here and cut with your scissors. So I do keep big shears at my table like this, and then I also have the 5-inch blades. Now these big ones we don't sell on our website, but these smaller 5-inch ones, you can find them on our website, and they're very handy to have at the machine. Because you'll see as we progress along how we do a lot of cutting at our sewing machine. Now everybody can cut squares and strips and sew them together. So I know everybody can do this. And when you cut them apart, you just want to go down the middle of that open space. You don't have to go back in and, good grief, think if we had to come back in here and clean it up, clean it up, clean it up, clean it up, cut those edges perfect. That would be 2 cuts on every one of them instead of just the one to separate. Now I do like to cut the tails off, or if you've got pieces that are too long, because if you have a bunch hanging off, then it's harder to press. Now I don't use any steam or starch after I get started sewing. I only use steam or starch at the beginning before I start cutting my fabric. If I need to prep my fabric, then I will. But once I start the process, no steam or starch. Steam or starch is for the ones that are not behaving, when they need extra work to force them to be what you want them to be. And we all know we don't want to do that. Think about your fabric as your friend, or like a relationship with a friend. You know, you want to treat that friend nice. Find a good friend and treat them nice. Buy good fabric and treat it nice. Don't force it and make it be something that it cannot be or do. That's not good in a relationship. It doesn't work, and it doesn't work in your sewing room with your relationship with your fabric. And I used to, when I did lectures all the time, I would always say, if you don't buy, if the fabric on the bolt, if you don't like the way it looks on the bolt, don't buy it. You cannot take it home and change it. You know, so look at it on the bolt well and make sure it's what you want, and then take it home and use it the way it was meant to be used. Okay, so now we want short pieces on the side. So I like to just kind of spread them out. And we talked this morning about how this little short strip that we're going to cut, how it needs to be at least the size of your cut square. So let's just say these were 4 inches. Then your little short strip has to be exactly 4. But if you take the time to cut it exact, then you have to take the time to lay it on here exact. And that's just a lot of exact. We want exact work, but we don't want to have to do all of that exact. So I'm just laying it across the cut edge to cut edge, because that's what we have to cover, even though we're going to sew it here. This is 1/4 of an inch under here and 1/4 of an inch under here. So this is a 1/2 inch smaller than this, because this is sewn and this is cut, and it has to cover the cut. So not counting that selvage edge, I have about 1/4 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch, and I'm just grabbing it and marking it with my hand. Now this first one is longer because of that selvage. So the rest of these do not have to be that long. So see how I just fan folded it? And see how this first one's a little bit longer because of that selvage edge. And you can lay it down on there and see, okay, bam, I got plenty. And so now these bigger shears are nice. Come in here and clip those folds. Okay, so now I'm just going to I said this morning, it's kind of like dealing a deck of cards. I'm just going to put one on each side. Now, whatever I have in my hand, I want to follow through and do that whole process. I don't want to lay stuff down and pick it up and lay it down and pick it up. So I'm going to go in and work with all of these. And it actually gets a side 3, because see, we already did side 1 and 2. Now we're on side 3. So it gives me 1 strip for each one. That worked out really nice. So I'm just going to line them up with the square. The square is is always your guide. It's where your sizing comes from. It's where you line your seams up. Everything is done with that square. So I just want to make sure that there's a little bit above the seam here and a little bit above the seam there. So I got a couple of these lined up really good. So that's going to let me kind of rock and roll pretty fast through these that are right here with my machine. So I'm not going to do much talking. I'm just going to sew. Okay, now I'm going to move these a little closer to me, get these lined up.
It's still shaking.
I'm sewing pretty fast, huh? She's just shaking. It's not as bad as it was this morning. I got it put in the cabinet better.
My camera's not even on your table.
Okay, so we have all aside 3 on the quantity that we're working with. You can either put your scrap in and get the rest of them out, or you can just come back here and grab some off the back.
What causes the vibrating?
Well, I think it's because we're on a second story, and so the floor is wood. If we were downstairs or in the film studio, it's all cement. So, and ground floor. But I don't know, Steve, I was thinking about it. If you remember when I would sew on the card table at the end of the living room, and halfway through the day, the card table would be up so close, I'd have to move everything back. So we need another round of short strips for side 4. So I'm just grabbing a,
I didn't get to see that.
well, I don't think I have it the right size, so I'm going to have to do it. No, that is the right size. Okay. About folding it? Want me to do it again?
When you were high.
Okay, so we're just going to lay it across our piece just like we did earlier, get our little magic placement, and then just fan fold it. So we have any questions? Let me know what you are learning. So we get side 4 on here, and that completes the basic square, and it can be turned into any of the options 1 through 17, flying geese, half square triangles, square in a square, just about everything, anything you need to put a quilt together. So I'm just lining these up with the edge of the strip with the edge of the square, as nice and neat as I can. I don't do too many because I feel like they do kind of get moved around a little bit before you get to the actual sewing. So just do the ones kind of around. So did any of you guys start a project from this morning? Are any of you guys doing this? I'm so excited. I love American history, and we're going to be 250 years old in 2026, and that's what one of those fabric has on it. It has 1776, 2026, so it's celebrating our 250 years. So I really want to see some quilts in the next 18 months where people are making quilts to celebrate. You know, it was during the bicentennial in 1976, so that was a few years ago. But that was kind of the resurgence of, 50 years. It was 200 in 1776. I can't believe it's been 50 years. But that was when quilting started ramping up again and becoming, you know, growing from what it is today. So I'm really hoping that we'll see another surge of renewance in quilting and some of those arts. People got all excited about it. And in 1976, the main quilt that people were learning and doing, and of course the teachers teaching, new teachers teaching, was the sampler quilt. Because in each sampler block, you learned a different technique, a different shape, a different way to do something, and it taught most all of the skills. It taught most all the skills that you needed for quilting, and so it was designed that once you took that class, you had all the knowledge you needed to go in and just start building and making all the quilts. Well, of course, we had more modern technologies 50 years ago than they did 100 and 200 years ago. So that was when all of our strip piecing started in the probably mid-80s. Rotary cutters came out. I still remember the first time I saw a rotary cutter. I was like, oh my stars. All right, so we're going to press these, and just like we did before, you can see how, you know, if you saw this morning what we did and retained it and knew what we were doing, you can just see how once you learn this, everything is just repetition. It's like change colors, change size, and then when you get ready to start trimming, then you start doing you know, different things. But this sewing of the basic square is the main construction of every quilt. Is this right here? You know, and I'm really, you know, being a historian, I like to think backwards and I like to think forwards. And so I think about how we look at quilts now, and we think about the life of the quilter and what they were doing and what resources they had and all that. Well, I wonder if 50 years, 100 years, they'll come back to some quilting diaries that we have, or even to someone's stash, you know, say that, you know, you passed away or a nuclear bomb came or whatever, and your sewing room was just left in the way that you had it. You know, if they came back to mine and they saw all of these, and then they saw someone had a bunch of these in Nevada and Utah and Maine and Texas and Germany and whatever, they would be like, what was happening in the quilt world that everybody was doing this? What was going on? I love to forward think and think about what Square in a Square will be in the future, and how it will be written in the history books. It is revolutionary. So we're going to go over here and trim these. We're going to trim these into flying geese, just like we did before. Now we need some of them. We're going to leave all of them in the whole piece, because we need some that we're going to sew together and do these corner strips on. And then we need some that we're going to sew together and just cut just like that. And then we've got some of these little stars that we're going to start sewing these to and getting the crown shape on. Okay. Questions?
So we're, camera's right there.
We're using this one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is that one you added? So Steve was busy while we had our break, adding cameras, trying to provide you guys with better vision so that you can learn. He's very dedicated to you guys. Okay, so we're going to just trim. And the first trim, we're going to put this 90. Now this fabric is going to be a little bit harder for you guys to see. Can they see this right here?
You're a little bit far.
Do I need to move it one direction or the other?
You have to go to the right.
Go to the right. Okay, like that?
Yep.
Okay, so where this first set of line, I'm using the mini, where this first set of lines come together and touch, that's the 90, and from the point or tip of that 90 to the edge of the ruler is 1/4 of an inch. So we're going to put the tip of this 90 in the tip and the corner of 2 opposite sides, and this is going to line up over the seam, and this is going to line up through that point. So if this 90 goes here, can they see all that? If that 90 is here, then this grid line here shoots through that opposite corner, okay? Well, we have sunshine outside, but that wind is blowing and it is cold. It might as well be blowing snow the way it's acting. Now, if these little trim off corners are big enough, I save them. And see, you don't want your strips to be any longer than you have to, because see what you trim off, if it's too small to use, then it just goes in the little waste bin. But when our squares get bigger and our strips get bigger,
There's that light's in the way there.
then we definitely do it.
So much for that.
So you can see how I just spread them out and just hop from one to the other. And when I trim it, I could just go to the next and the next. Sometimes I do it like this, where I just go from one to the other. But then you can flip them and get to the other side. Now remember, 2 sides are with the 90 and it leaves the 1/4 of an inch. 2 opposite sides. Now I do like working here at my cutting table, because I want you to watch what I do now. I want you to watch. See, because sometimes it can take time and it's hard to pick up a ruler, and if you have arthritis and that kind of stuff, then it can be harder to do it. But can they see my hand? So I want you to see how I bring it to the edge of the table and I just tip it up, and then I can move it and put it right back down. So then I can move even faster and get a hold of it. See how I can slide it and tip it? The fastest ruler in the West. Okay, so these all have 2 sides trimmed. They're ready for the other 2. And since you cut on the corner, then I kind of turn them the way that I would cut them, kind of like a piece of paper. You don't write like this, you kind of turn it and write. And so that's kind of the way you can do your pieces too. Come on, honey, put them roller skates on. Keep up with me. We've got 2 more here. We'll go ahead and get them. I think that's more than what we needed, but So as you trim them, make sure you keep them square. You don't want your outside edges to all be just, you know, uneven. You've got to keep these good 90 corners so that your work stays square. So what that means is that when I'm looking at this line and this line, that they're the same, they're parallel. Okay, so now we're going to come in here and do the two-step. So let's show them on the ruler. Is this a good spot right here?
Sure.
Okay, so before we had this 90 come together and we had that 1/4 of an inch off of our points. But now we're going to do what we call the two-step. So we push the 90 in there and then we just step 1, 2. And you want this line to be on that seam and you want the edge or the tip of that line to be right in the corner or the edge or the tip of that center square. And then from that two-step one, see how you have a new grid line that shoots through that point. So is this one right here a good one for them to see? So I push my 90 in there and then I step 1, 2. I make sure it's nice and sharp right in the tip. I look to see how that grid line is going through that opposite corner, and I look here where I've already cut and here where I already cut, and my block is staying true and square, so I'm going to get good 90 corners everywhere. And this is moving my seam allowance where I need it to be. We have got some wind going on out there. I'm glad we don't have any snow going with it. So 1/4 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, two-step, two-step, should be nice and sharp. Now, sometimes when you get your colors together, these corners can be a little difficult to see because of the colors blending in with the colors that are there. So make sure you have good light, and if that is something with your fabrics that you need to pay attention to. Because I had one that I cut just a little too close because the colors looked so similar. And this is an 8-inch star that we're working with. So these will be a 2 by 4 sewn. So that means a 2.5 by 4.5 cut. If I am remembering correctly. I'm going to go back and trim that little edge just a little bit better. Just a couple more to go. Are they quiet?
Yeah. Others have had rain and wind and cold for the past couple weeks.
I haven't heard what our winter is supposed to be like. I haven't looked it up. You know, a lot of it has to do with what they call the solar weather. what the weather that's happening on the sun. It has a effect on space. And then, of course, space weather is our weather. They even know when earthquakes and stuff are coming by watching the sun.
Do you know the brand of your table?
This is a Tracy tables. You would see him at all the...
And then what about the sewing machine one?
The sewing machine one is by a company called Roberts that's not around anymore. I've had that one probably 20 years, my big white one. And then, I'm sure you can go online and look up Tracy tables. And this one is like, it's a big board size. So you get a big board and it fits on top of the towers. This is actually 2 tables that I put together. And this one has drawers on each end, and this one has shelves on each end. You can get what you like. And then it leaves a space inside, like right here below is a space. And I just used that, I think it's called Elf brand, that you go to like a container store. I'm sure other places have them, but like where you could build like your California closets and stuff, and you can look at different shelving that you can make any size that you want. And I don't know, I think your camera will come down here so that they can see it.
Let's see what.
So see how this is just one of those big boards, and see it just sits on there. They've got grooves and stuff in there so it doesn't move around. It won't move around. And then you have drawers. And then I have drawers on this, and that's what it actually sits on. And then these are just, I think it's called, is it Elf or not Olfa, but, and then it has all these little attachments and stuff that you can get to go on in different sizes, skinny ones and big ones and so on. Okay, we are ready. Let's look at what we're going to do next. So now that we have these trimmed up, we need to make one that looks like this with the corner strip on. This will do 1 block, this will do 1 block, and then we need a group that looks like this for 1 block. So this right here goes for 1 block. So I need to, and when I'm doing this step and I need to kind of pay attention to what I'm doing, I have these little clips. I like them better than pins. And this also tells me when I get to the sewing machine that it's just grouped these together. It hasn't pinned them perfect. So we want to make sure those 2 steps is what we're going to sew together. And so I'll just do that. So that'll do 1 block. And that'll do 1 block. So here's 1 block, 1 block, 2 block, 2 block. Now these will be these, so that's a 3. And so I need this one over here. And then I'm putting it in that stack because that tells me it needs to go with these corner strips. And so that will get me 4. And this will get me 4. Now, so I'm going to set these over on my machine area. And I want, while we're here, I want these to be ready to roll. So these two are stars that we made this morning. Now you'll notice one side is all clean and neat because remember when these were together, we cleaned up all of those before we sewed them on. See, this was in the middle, so it's going to be clean. Whoops, this one right here. So you can see how these were in the middle. That was the cut, and so it made them clean. So we just need to clean up this side and this side because this is where that little extra was. And so I'm using my mini ruler, and I'm putting the edge of the ruler around across that open end of those flying geese. I'm looking at grid lines, making sure that everything is staying, that my fabric underneath is not twisted, and everything is going to be my good true 90s. And that 1/4 of an inch line on the ruler goes right off of those points. And so I know I have a good seam line off of those points. Okay, now when I'm looking at this one's crooked. So what am I going to do to fix it? So when I line it up along the edge of this flying goose, which is my first thing to go to, then I come over here and see that would be like, oh, okay, that's great. I got a 1/4 of an inch off my corners. Everything's good. But when I come over here and look at the rest of the stuff in the ruler, it's not good. So something's happened, something's going on. So first of all, when I look at the edge of the ruler and I look at this seam, see the edge, the ruler is almost right there with the seam, but as it goes down, it gets wider. So my fabric underneath is not true or straight. When I come in here and look at these horizontal lines, see, look at that one. That one's not straight. See, look at this one. Those aren't straight. So I need to come in here. So now what I'm going to do is first of all, I'm going to look at some lines and my star point. And then I'm going to come down here and look and see what I can do. Well, when I come down here and I do that, if I would cut, it would be right there where that point is, and it would give me no seam allowance. So instead of cutting that edge, I'm going to come over here and look at this one and see what's going on with it. Okay, so it's horizontal here, nice. It's on my points there, nice. But see, that's off just a little bit. So I trimmed that up. Now let's come in here and check this one. And since this is my true line, that's what I'm going to put it on first. And then I'm going to check it with my 1/4 of an inch. Okay, and I can tell that that's where it's gotten just a little bit off. It's about a 1/16. So I'm not going to worry about it. Just a little bit right there. Just a tiny little bit right there came off. Now I'm going to come back over here. But since this was the one that was off, I can't use that for my true line. This is my true line. So I'm going to grab a bigger one, like my grande. And I'm going to at least measure it. I need, my block needs to be 8.5. So see how this one's wider? It can cut all of my sides. So I'm going to use this side here of my fabric because it's the good part. And I'm just going to see where we're at. So we're good up here. It gets off just a little bit here, but it's not more than 1/8 of an inch. So if it's an 1/8 or less, it's workable. And I'm not going to worry about it, but I am going to mark it. So this side I don't have to trim, but I'm going to mark it from about here to here, and that will tell me when I get ready to go sew that was too skinny, just a little bit skinny, so that I can work with it. So I'm going to go here, and this is the one I need to cut. And these two sides here are the better sides. So this one was my best. So I'm actually going to come in here and see where I'm at with it. Okay, now I've got some on this side that's not good. So see, this is why in my sewing room is good. You can see how that when you do have something that is not working out the way you want it to, how you can work with it and figure out what to do with it. Okay, so from about here to here is off. Now obviously you can see that this square is out farther than what my seam is here. It's right at 1/8 of an inch, and I have plenty from my point here. So when we get to sew our crown onto here, these will remind me, and this little chip, this little dip in here will remind me. And I'll show you how we'll do it so that it won't affect the size of the block or the look of the block or the integrity of the block. And when we get those other pieces sewn onto the sides, and we can still make it square, and with this next row, we'll work with it to make it what it should be. Okay? All right. Everybody having fun? Any questions? It's a quiet group. Lunch made them tired? Well, you know, if you're a mom or a grandma with little kids and it gets quiet, you need to go investigate what's going on. I'll have one bowl get full and the other bowl get empty if I don't keep them sorted a little bit. They all wind up over here at my sewing machine. All right, so I took that off. I need to make sure I know where I'm at. Make sure you sew across the two-step corner. And remember, this seam right here that you're making is the seam that's going to give you your seam allowance when you cut it for this, when you come in here and cut it on that step. So when you think about these crown shapes that go on your block, and you think about flying geese and corners, and we have, I think, 4 blocks going here. I want you to look at how quick we've gotten to this step. We've been going an hour, and we have 32 flying geese here, ready to rock and roll. Okay, so now we're going to press these. And remember, I put this in the long way so that it helps shoot my fabric out. And we're going to press these open. Let's see. Yep, see how we press these open? And then we don't have all this bulk everywhere. So once again, I heat that seam up so that it'll be easier to work with. This is a little row into travel iron, and these are the wool mats, and we have all of those on our website for those of you that need a resource. And when you do use your travel iron, remember, don't push here because this little handle will fold down in there because it's a travel iron. It'll, if you push on it, it'll break it. So keep your weight down here. And if you need to tie string on the end or put some tape or something on the end to remind you to hold it here and not here. Something to remind you, because it could happen. You could even have a guest in your sewing room and it happens.
Or yourself. You've done it.
You can do it. Your guest could do it. A grandkid could do it. So, but we do have resources now. There's a place in Colorado that will fix your travel iron if you do that. So that's nice. So if you need that information, Mr. Steve can help you with that. Just email him. Remember, squareandsquare.net is the teaching website. You can go in there and get all past stuff and class this morning and all that. And because, you know, when we do these, and they are live on Facebook and YouTube and stuff, you know, if you have a lot of posts, then they get pushed back down. Now, there is a little area where you can go in and tap and see all the videos and pictures and stuff, but a lot of people don't realize you can do that, and they have to scroll back and look for it and all that. So if you know, you can just go to squareandsquare.net to find your videos, then it just makes it really easy. And if you sign up with your email and put us in your address so it doesn't go to your spam, then you'll get notifications about our classes and activities and promotions and all of that. Okay, so there those are.
Do you have patterns specific for pre-cut jelly roll strips of 2.5 inches?
I do not have any patterns that are for pre-cut. Now, we did do some of that in Quilt Club Week. I think in 2020 or maybe 2021, we worked specifically with pre-cuts. But, I mean, if you think, this is squares and strips. Almost everything we do is a 2.5 inch strip. So those jelly rolls are just your strips that you sew around. So it's just kind of rethinking a little bit. Okay, so we're working on 4 blocks. I have 2 here already with sides, so I need 2 more with sides. Then I'm going to put sides on 1, 2, and I should have 4 over here that will be my short sides, and I do. So we're done with those until we cut them. And these 2, see how these have the sides on them? If you watched this morning, you saw us do it with 1 flying goose. Now we have 2 flying geese. So part of what you're seeing here is what we taught in the with firefly. So if you understand what we're doing here, then when you move into the firefly with flying geese and half square triangles, then you'll already be ahead of the game. Oops, that's a little piece. That won't necessarily work. We'll use that one. Okay, so just like we did when we sew our basic square, and we're going to do it on the short side, on the 2-step side. Now remember, when we're doing these, we need a fat finger in between. We need a little bit more space than when we're doing just basic squares. And once again, this seam is making your seam allowance for those points.
Can you move that iron?
Mm-hmm. How's that? Because when we're doing basic squares, these edges right here are part of those trim offs that we do. But when we're doing the strip for the corner square, we need all of that fabric for that corner square. Because this is going to be a square on the end of it. It's not going to angle off and be a triangle unit. Now, when you're learning the firefly and all of that, and 2 of these on here, it's probably a little bit harder to work with because I need to get in here and cut this one off. When you just have 1 or 2, it's actually easier to work with more than it is less. But when you're doing the firefly and you're folding and you're sewing your pieces together in multiple rows, we say don't work with more than 4 half square triangles. So if you think about it, this is 1 half square triangle, 2, 3, 4. So we're working with 4 half square triangles, and in firefly we say don't work with more than 4. Because it's just too hard to rein in all those little magical fireflies. And they just want to keep doing their magic everywhere. Okay, so now we need to come back here and grab this one. Now I don't have any more to put on. I'm ready to take this all out. So I just kind of scoot it to the side and run my scrap in, trim it off. And I'm going to separate these. And now we're just going to press. We're going to heat that seam up. And we're going to heat this seam up. Okay. Now, I think it's okay if you want to just go in and press that to that solid square or strip, whatever you want to call it. Because this, this seam right here is going to line up with this seam right here. So our next step will go to the, whoops, I need to press him. And we'll see when we get ready to sew together. We'll see real quick whether that's going to work to press them to the strip or the solid. Alrighty, back over to the cutting board. So these go down vertical. We're going to use our mini ruler. We're going to use this 1/4 of an inch line along the side, and we're just going to go through that corner. The 1/4 of an inch line will be right off of that point, and this one should just go right through that corner. And this nice clean edge should go right up with that line, which is a 2.5 mark. So the edges of the ruler go right through those points, and the 1/4 of an inch line goes right there on that little crown point. And this line over here should be right on that 2.5. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn them so that they're all the same.
While we're here, what size is that rotary cutter, that little one you have?
This is that little one, and is it, it's a 28.
28.
Uh-huh,
And the other's a 45.
yeah. I don't see the size on it, but yeah. Okay, so let's look at our block. So can they see this and this? Okay, so look how this goes so that the points are up, and wow, look at that, matching up perfect. Love it when a plan comes together. So I'm going to scoot these over here. Now, also, well, I'll wait till I get the other pieces, because look how, see how these points are going out, but you know, look what happens when you turn stuff in. I mean, it's just, and depending on what you were doing here for this block that it's going to sew next to, you know, it could be something that you really love. And then see how this flying goose goes this, and then this, and this. See how it makes this little kind of a little staircase thing. So think how you could use that in a project. Or a border, yeah. Okay, now these have edges, outside edges we have to clean up, and these are a little bit longer. I don't know that my mini will fit all the way, so I'm going to go to my grande. And it has that 1/4 of an inch line on that side too. So I'm going to go and so I'm putting it across my clean cut geese. I'm looking for lines that line up nice.
Any ideas for something besides a 4-patch in the middle?
Oh, anything in the middle. You can do option 1 square in a square in the middle. You can do a plain square in the middle, 4-patch in the middle, pinwheel in the middle, 9-patch in the middle, log cabin in the middle, an hourglass shape in the middle, 1/4 square triangles in the middle. If you have the diamond book, you can go to the diamond book, and oh, there's probably 50 pages that talk about different block sizes, and it shows what happens when you change the middle. And you could certainly go there to get some ideas. So let's turn it, since this is all turned. There you can kind of see what kind of it's really cool. You get a cool shape like that. I love pointy points though. So there's that. I love it that I can check all of my 2, 4, 6 corners, points, and then of course these points are good, and then I can check and see that it's going to be wide enough. So occasionally you get little shivers of your flying geese, but most of the time you really don't trim any of that off because you've already got it the size you want when you do your trimming of your flying geese. It's amazing how fast time flies in your sewing room when you're with good friends and having fun. Now you want to make sure that you stay on track when you're doing this because you've got a lot of work invested in here, and you don't want to mess it up. Now, if you don't know, there is, I like to keep my stuff cleaned up good, and if you have trouble with your board, now first of all, if your board has got little edges in it, then you're not changing your blade enough and you're using a dull blade. So not only does a dull blade tear up your work, but it also tears up your mats. Your fabric costs a pretty penny and those mats aren't cheap, so don't be stingy and keep using a blade that's not any good. And this is just kind of like a little scratcher. You probably got someone that's got some crochet or knitting skills that can make some of these. You know, you could use them to wash dishes with, but scrub your pans, but it's also great to come in here and clean up your mats. All right, let's go sew some of these together. Questions? Okay, so of course first you're going to sew, let's see, this one on one side I didn't get trimmed. I got sidetracked with this one that was, I'm just going to trim this one real quick. Or maybe I did and I just didn't pin it. Here's my Okay, now that side that I just trimmed was a little bit short in one spot. I'm sure I'll see it, but if I put a pin on it or a clip, then I know that I won't miss it. Now you want your points to go out. So make sure that you're sewing your blue to your piece. And you want to try to find that middle part the best you can. So when this is pressed open, see how this can go right along here to this fore patch?
I'm sorry.
What's happened?
I have a bad view.
Okay.
It must have rolled up.
Okay, so since this is pressed open, then we know right where that middle is, and it should line up right here with the middle of that star. So that's what I'm checking first, is to make sure I'm right in the middle. And then just let it lay nice and flat. Now we're going to come over here and we're going to work with one of these sides that's not the way we want it. And the main thing here is to make sure, since it's a little bit short right here, we want to make sure that we get enough in that seam allowance that it won't pull away. And then this corner right here is just a tiny bit close. So I'm going to put it like that, and I'm going to flip it. And well, first of all, I'm going to line up this center that way I know I'm on the center. The center here lines up with that open seam. And if you want to pin it so it doesn't move around, you can. You're already working with something that has a little bit of a challenge, so.
I have a question on where did you get the wood base that holds your rulers? Did you or Steve make it, or did you buy it?
Actually, I think that was a gift from another vendor that had them. Okay. I think I've had it for probably 20 years. Yeah. You used to be able to find those at just about any quilting show, whether it was a little local show or a bigger show. I think you could probably even go online and get them nowadays. But okay, so I have this lined up and I'm watching very carefully. Now we're ready to come over here and do opposite side. Make sure that center is lined up with that 4-patch. And I actually have 4 blocks here, but I just have 2 stars down off of my wall, so I'm just kind of moving through with 2. Now, that was the one that was on the bottom, and look how I got that one twisted. So you can decide if you want to just, you know, it's the one that's on top. So let me show you a little trick. I don't want to take the seam out because it will take it out through that whole layers. But I can come in here, if you did garments, you know that you can come in here and do a little clip, and then you can still get that to press flat, and it doesn't change the integrity of your block any, but it will still make that be flat. Now notice how I don't pull around on the edge of my quilt. Notice how I do it like this, or I grab it here where the seam is. I don't pull around on it. See how I'm grabbing here to maneuver it, position it. It's strongest where the seams are. Okay, so that's 4 sides on this one. Oh, that wind must have been bringing dirt or allergies or something in. My nose is just twitched all day. Okay, so once again, I want to press seams open. So I go where the intersections are, where the most fabric will be, and that's where I try to open those up, because that's going to be the hardest part to open up. And then when you open them up, you can also check really good to make sure you got enough of the edges of the fabric in the seam, because I had a couple of these that were a little short. Remember, if an eighth of an inch or larger, it'll work. But if it's smaller, then you're going to have to really be careful. And this one right here is a little bit small, but when I open those seams up, I can see exactly how much is caught in the seam, and it's going to be perfect. So I got the integrity, the strength of my block is good, and my sizing and my points and everything will be good because I knew how to handle that. That one got twisted in there. Should have paid better attention. Questions? Let me know what you're learning, guys. So it's amazing how many blocks, I mean, there's thousands of quilt blocks. Just by changing a little bit here and a little bit there, you can get such unique and different designs, just like on this one, making these flying geese go out or in, changing the centers. Even on these red points, you could flip them and make them go in, and you get such a totally different block. It's just amazing, but almost everything you make is flying geese and half square triangles, option 3 and 4. So really learn those and master those. Go in and make your option overview book, and then just go in and start, you know, learning more with those. I used to have files of blocks that used option 3 and 4, and it just like every quilt would go in that file. And so when I was looking for ideas and looking for blocks, it was such a big file to go through. So I finally started changing up the option 3 and 4 files to files, you know, that had different categories in them that were more about the block instead of the option, because everything is 3 and 4. So such a beautiful block, easy to do, a lot of bang for its buck, a lot of beauty for the work that you put in, and just so many different ways that you can set them together to get different looks. Okay, so now we're going to come in and we're going to match up these corner square seams with these seams. And since these are long, I am going to pin these. Now this one on these I opened up, and some of those other ones I pressed to the side, but they're matching up to a pressed open area, so it doesn't matter if you did them open or. Now when I pin, I do not pin in a seam, I pin next to a seam. When you pin in a seam, it shifts everything around. So pin around a seam. Now this is my middle one here, so once again I can match that middle up with the middle. So this is the one that had that little clip on it. So I want you to see, can they see here very well? Let me straighten it up. Can they see right here? So this is where the clip was, because the goose didn't come all the way out the way that we wanted it to when the ruler was laid on there to trim it up. And so see how I just let it lay down in there, and see it doesn't match up with that blue underneath, and that's okay. You're still going to get a good point and keep your sizing the way it needs to be. I'm not going to force it by pushing it up there. It doesn't have to be. There's enough there to catch that the seam will be good and strong. You'll still be able to get your point there, and it won't change the size of the block. And as I pin it on here and lay it out, I just kind of pat it down, don't push and pull. And then when you kind of pat it down, and you can tell how it's going to lay in the position, and if everything is going to scoot together the way it should. So we're going to get all 4 of these ready, and then we can sew all 4 of them all at once. So basically I know that if 2 pieces are not coming, so like if my star and this crown was not matching up to where the edges were nice and flush, if there's one edge that's up that's a little bit more, I know that that's where it's supposed to be, because if it had been too much, I would have trimmed it off when I quote squared it up. So if it's there and it's poking out, then I know that it's the correct one. And then when I press, I always check my seams. I check the integrity of them to make sure that everything is, that there's enough fabric in the seams everywhere. So if it has any complications, I can go back in and fix it then and not later. So that other one where I had those clips worked out great. So let's see how this one's doing. And I think if you haven't if you haven't pressed your stuff yet, I would press as much of this open as you can. And these little pins here that I'm working with that have this little skinny kind of round head on them, you can get them in different lengths. And I do like them, but gosh, you just don't get very many in a package. So those you might not want to share with a friend. Hang on to all of them. They're pretty pricey. Unless she buys you Starbucks all the time, and then you'll be even. I'm not being selfish. I'm just taking care of my stuff. Sometimes I need to borrow a pen from somebody. I don't want to borrow an expensive pen from somebody. Because I don't sew with a lot of pens. So sometimes when I go to retreats and stuff, I don't have a pen. So if I'm borrowing a pen from somebody, I don't want to borrow their expensive one.
Makes sense.
So I'm not being selfish. I'm being thoughtful.
I wouldn't even pay attention.
Okay, one more side. We're going to sew and press, and we're going to have 2 of these little babies done, and you'll be able to see what they look like. 2 blocks in 2 hours, guys. Okay, so this one is the one that I didn't press this open, and it is working okay, but I just like that press open. I've gotten so used to it. I just am liking it. And there's not so much to shift and move when you are pinning and getting your work together. And I like that. Less movement of your fabric. All right, guys, I hope you're enjoying your Merry Christmas from Square in a Square with this class. Okay, here we go. Okay, I want to be sure and check right along there, so I'm putting a little clip so I know to check that seam along in there, make sure that there's enough caught. And like I said, if you press open, you'll definitely see on both sides how much is there. Now, usually when I think about when to sew it into the machine, or, you know, do I sew it this way or do I flip it and sew it that way? There's 2 things you can think about. You can think about, okay, where are the most points at or the most seams that you need to pay attention to? Put that on the top. If there's one that's a little bit bigger that you need to kind of work in, then that needs to go on the bottom because those feed dogs help. But with my walking foot, it helps with both layers, so I don't have to do that on this machine. So let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 areas that we need to watch, counting points and seams. And over here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 areas. So that means that I would sew it like this with this small one on top. It also works because this is big and the small is on top. But I also have some integrity of the seam right through here that I need to pay attention to. So I maybe want to work with it on top. One of those seams that is pressed open got flipped a little bit, so that's why I'm fixing it now when I see it, and it's easier than when I wait and press and then okay, so while I have it in my hand, I can look right through here at my seam and make sure that everything's good. And it's good, so I don't need to worry about that. Okay, we're going to press this other one, and we're going to sew this last seam and press it, and then wow, our 2-hour marathon is be done, won't it? So great. So what we have left to do on the quilt is the star border, which is basically like the red star and that we did, except a plain middle, and of course flying geese like we did here on the crown. And then we have our Milky Way stars. So in the morning in our class, we will work on our Milky Way star. But we're not going to do it as a block. It's going to be sashing. And then when the sashing comes together with the other blocks, then it turns into that Milky Way. And what I'm really going to love on this one is I have the red Milky Way star planned for it, for the setting. And that is going to really stand out. So we'll have our red star in the middle with our black, and then we'll have our red Milky Way stars. And I think that's just going to be really, really pretty. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to check all of our corners. Wow, this one is just spot on. I mean, it couldn't be any better. Very good. Very happy. Okay, so now when we get here to the back, I think, of course, there is a lot of seams, so I think that we need to press these open. Now, see how these are all bunched together, because that's the seam that we did, and we want that seam to, I'm going to say, spread apart or open up so that we can get a really good clean press. But notice I don't grab along the edge. Notice I come in where the seam is at, and I come into the block, and then I can kind of spread it like that so that it gets, I can get in here and get this good press, and it doesn't mess with the edges and stretching it all out. So now's the time to get in any last minute questions or comments. So somebody asked this morning if you can make a mariner's compass, and we said yes, but not as your first block. Just about every quilt can be made with square in a square. So what do you want to make using the square, or I guess I shouldn't say using the square in a square. What quilt do you want to make that is kind of like your dream quilt? Is it a quilt with a certain border? Is it a certain block? Is it a, I'm going to say, a well-known block or name? Throw it out there on the comment section, and we'll talk about it while I'm getting these last few pressed. So what is the quilt or the block that you've always wanted to make? A lot of people thought Storm at Sea was one that they could never make, and we've shown in Quilt Club Week and Quilt Club and Premium Club how to make those Storm at Seas. You can make them in your sleep, how to change them up, change blocks. It's just amazing.
Storm at Sea is the first.
Storm at Sea, go for it. You don't have to wait on that one. The pattern's in at the back of the reference book, and there's if you're in Premium Club, last week we did some Storm at Sea ideas, and then also Quilt Club Week of 2023. Sherry and I did a quilt and a lecture on Storm at Sea. Storm at Sea is an option 1, square and a square. It's an option 2 where you sew around it twice. So it's like what we did today. Sew around it once is an option 1. Sew around it 2 times is an option 2. And then it's a option 7 block, which is the very beginning of the diamond. So that one you can do.
So we have Storm at Sea.
I wouldn't even worry about you.
And then we have Wedding Ring.
Wedding ring, yeah, that's a little bit of a challenge. That's one that we're working on. It'll be a while, but that's one that we can do.
Tumbling block.
Oh, tumbling block's already ready to go. It's in the reference book. It's called In the Garden, and easy peasy. It's option 1 is all that it is.
Yeah, staggered.
Yeah, just staggered.
Log cabin cross and carpenter star.
Carpenter star is in, it's just option 1, square and a square, option 3, flying geese, option 4, half square triangles. The pattern's already in the reference book. Go for it. We've taught it a couple of times.
Mariner's compass would be great.
Mariner's compass is a future down the
Hunter star.
Oh, Hunter star, yeah, we've done it. We did that. I think we did that during COVID. And the free webinars, we did that in like 2018.
I thought we did one more.
We did one with Farmer's Wife, which was last spring semester.
How about a medallion setting quilt?
Medallion setting. So medallion to me is like a big square in the middle, and then you do whatever around it. And we've talked about that a lot, the letters to a soldier. So the medallion quilts in the middle were normally square quilts, and those were quilts that were made most before 1840, but for sure before in the 1800s and early 1800s, late 1700s. They would start out with a real beautiful medallion in the middle, whatever it was, and then work around it. The book Letters to a Soldier, we have kind of a medallion shape in the center, and then seemed like there was another one that we did that was like that. And the beds did not start getting to be a rectangle shape.
Feather star.
Oh, Feathered Star, that's in Maylee's Maylee
Yes,
Women
she's ready
book.
to make it or wanting to.
Feathered Star is in Maylee Women, and then we also did one in Quilt Club Week of 23. And you can, in the Firefly, you can get the Feathered Star out of the Maylee Women book, or you can get it out of the Firefly book. Is a different version. And doing it with a Firefly and the option 4 is just amazing.
Looking forward to the wedding ring.
Uh-huh.
Made one before, but would love to do it square in a square way.
Now there's one that's ready to go. It's in the Maylee Women book. We're going to teach it at Quilt Club Week next year. Sherry's working on it. And it is called a bridal veil wreath, and it is a circle with lots of little jagged points coming off of it. And that's kind of a form of a wedding ring. It's a circle.
We have Texas Star.
Texas Star is all done with diamonds. There's a strip piecing method for it. It's not really square in a square, but you can do it faster with all strips.
Junction.
A junction quilt? I'm not sure what that is. If you really want to know, send us an email, jody@squareandsquare.com.
Yeah.
I'd like to know. I want to know what it
I
is.
want to know what a junction is.
Yeah, I guess I can look it up, Google it, and see what it is.
And my dream was stars with long points.
Okay.
So I can do that now.
Yeah, with diamonds.
And the other was how do I sew without cutting off points? And Jody has taught me that already.
Yay. Now, those diamonds in the diamond book, like all those Tennessee waltz, all of those long points, you can do that easy now with the diamonds. Just get the diamond book and go to town on it. They're ready to roll. Okay.
Mother Star.
Mother Star. I don't know that
I
one.
haven't seen that one. There's some that's connected to people in the Bible with some blocks.
There are Bible blocks. There's really common ones like Jacob's Ladder and some of those that have been around forever, but there's also a lot of unusual and uncommon ones that are out there. And you know, when they did quilts to, you know, women didn't really have a voice, and they certainly couldn't vote before 1920 and all of that, so, or the 1920s. But that was the way that they spoke and gave their opinions and stuff, was in their quilt blocks. Like I think it's Montana or Wyoming or something like that. The boundaries of the state was 5440, and so the 5440 or fight block was made for the territory up north, and the men went off to fight, and the women stayed home and made the 5440 or fight quilt.
And I would love to use some of the options for borders.
Yes. Now, if you're in Premium Club, we did a whole semester of borders with the options. That was, let's see, this January was farmers, and then the one before that, January, was grid. So that would have been January spring semester of 22 that we did borders. And the cool thing about joining Premium Club is you get to go back in and watch all of that stuff. It's there for you anytime. Really some cool ideas and shapes and beautiful borders with the options. And we just, you know, touched the tip of the iceberg with in that border class. I think there were 12 or 15 classes, so 12 or 15 options with ideas. Okay, let's pin these up here. Let's see how we're working.
Okay, yes. Send those to us at squareandsquare.com or Jody at squareandsquare. Okay, what else? Oh, you want me to show you?
Well, it's not about me. It's about the quilt.
Where you at?
I'm up here on the wall. Okay, so I'm going to step back a little bit so I can even see it, maybe. Yeah, it blends in pretty good. You can't necessarily see it the way that I want you to yet, but you can see how we have the blocks done. And so our next step is that we make our star border. So making this star is just going to be like what we did here. We're going to make our option 3s. We're going to cut some of them in half to do the two opposite sides, and then we're going to do some of them with that corner strip and put those on, so you know that will go really fast. And those are going to be our dark blue. So you can see how we have the red block and then with the black, and then we're going to come in with the Milky Way star. Now if you're making just a Milky Way star, it's kind of like a 9 patch, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, plain squares, color, and background, and then the half square triangles. But we're not going to make it as a star. We're going to do it as a sashing. And so when the sashings come together, so see, here's a row of sashing, and then when the sashings come together, then it makes the star. So it will be red, black, black in our placement of our colors. I think it will turn out really pretty. And we're moving right along. So in the morning, on Tuesday morning, we're going to meet up at 11, and so 11 to 1. We'll work on our Milky Way stars. We'll show you how to do that, and then we'll give you a quick preview and rundown of that one at the end of class. We'll just see how much time we have left after the Milky Way stars. And that's it. That's all the steps. So, you know, really once you master this option 3, flying geese, just look at the possibilities that are available. We learned 4 patches. We learned option 3s. We learned how to do the corner squares as strips. We learned how to surround that block with a crown shape to create a more elaborate block. We're going to go in here and learn option 4, half square triangles. So just in this simple quilt, you've learned a lot of different steps, but they're simple steps, and you've learned how to work with things when they're not exactly the way you want them to. It's going to happen every once in a while. It's just that human element, but we do as much as we can in the process of making our quilts so that when we do have a human element come in there, it doesn't ruin the project. It doesn't alter the integrity of the block or the beauty and the look of the block. So make sure that you tell your friends about Square and a Square. Make sure you sign up on our website, squareandasquare.com, with your email, or go into squareandasquare.net, our teaching website, and of course you sign in with your email. You can watch the free webinars, you can watch replays from this and in the morning, and that's where you find all of your classes at. The free webinar section, Quilt Club Week section, and then Premium Club. And this should be found in all of the avenues, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. Quilt Club Week, Premium Club, the free webinars, this one and this morning and the one tomorrow will be in all of those because it's for everybody. So it's not shut off to or not just turned on to certain people. And oh, we also have our quilt text hotline. That number is 817-713-2879. And with that quilt text, you can send me pictures, you can ask for help, you can show me your ta-das of what you're doing. That's just a good way to communicate with me. And especially if you're asking a question that I need to teach or help you, because with that text hotline, I can make a little video and send it to you, and it's you know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So when I can show you where to find what you're looking for in your book, how to read a chart, how to break down a block, how to put it together, whatever, then that is just a wonderful resource for both of us to help. So even though I may not be a teacher that's right there in the classroom with you, you have access to your teacher anytime, all the time. And with technology, I can see your work, you can see my work, and it really is a nice avenue for me to teach and a wonderful way for you to learn. So come and join us. Come along our quilting path. We'll see you in the morning, and I hope you are enjoying your Moonlight Star. Now, I will make one more comment. It is a full moon if you're watching these live, and it has been cloudy off and on throughout these last few days, but it's a beautiful, I'm going to say super moon. I don't really know that it is a super moon, but it's been really pretty. So step outside and see if you can see the moon. See your Moonlight Star. We'll see you in the morning. Bye-bye for now.